Hey everyone, and welcome back to a quick episode of Bite the Arrow, in which I pull an arrow video, release off the shelf, give it a watch, and give you my quick, unedited, raw thoughts, because we all know I do not do any type of editing. So I'm back tonight, and I've just watched a film I didn't really have much interest in to watch initially, but I thought, you know what? Sod it, I'm pulling it off, I'm watching it. It's one I've never seen before. It's a first watch, and it is Sleepless, from the horror maestro himself, Dario Argento, the master of giallo. So this movie was released in 2001, I believe it was. So it's certainly a lot later than his previous filmography classics such as Deep Red, Suspiria, and that. So certainly you can tell that this is Argento returning to his comfort zone, his comfort blanket, what he knows best. And there are certainly scenes in this which you can really relate that he's kind of repeating safe grounds. That's very much repeating parts, or certainly filming segments and using characters such as puppets, which he's used before. So one would argue maybe not the most original, maybe playing it too safe, but do you know what? It worked for me. So it's basically about a bunch of murders done in 1983 by the Dwarf Murderer, where he killed a bunch of women. The film's set into the year 2000, so what happens is there's a double homicide, a double murder of some females on a train and train car park, and that's beautifully shot, I must admit. The cinematography by Ronnie Taylor is fantastic. I tell you what, him and Argento, and especially Argento, can really shoot a scene. The bit in the rain, the bit in the car park, it just looks beautiful. And I must admit, the tension created in the opening chase scene on the train and the blood is just fantastic. It really draws you in. So yeah, there's a double homicide, and there are links to the murder, the dwarf murderer from 17 years previous, from 1983, and the lead detective at that time was a guy called Moretti, can't remember his first name, played by the ever so great Max von Sydow. Rest in peace. And he plays a fantastic role. He's a retired detective suffering from dementia, and he's called into the case because they believe there's links with the murders from 17 years ago, 1983, which he was the lead investigator. Now, they're unsure if there is true links because the dwarf murderer was killed and buried. So, you know, they're trying to think, well, is it really linked? And then what happens as the movie progresses, more murders occur, and then Max von Sydow's character Moretti teams up with a guy called Jack, and I forget his surname, who's the son of one of the women who got murdered in 1983 by the dwarf murderer, and which he never actually saw his face. So these two join together as kind of this, it's not a buddy cop, but these two join together to try and investigate, is the dwarf murderer really dead, or is it a copycat killer, or was it someone was the dwarf murderer really the murderer back in 1983? Was he actually set up? So it's a real good giallo slasher in that sense. Now, one thing I would point out, this is quite slow than some of his other films. I wouldn't say the pacing is really off, but at 113 minutes, I think there's a 90-minute belter in here. So I know what they did with the story, and they tried to do a lot of development, but I think you could have trimmed it back. Maybe just a bit too long for me. So I'm not going to ruin the ending, because for a giallo, I cannot ruin it for you. I really do encourage you to go and watch it. But certainly, if you want in really heavy-hitting gore, it doesn't have this throughout, but it is worth the wait. There is a lot of the end sequence is gory, it's violent, extremely violent, and I must admit the special effects from back then, the practical effects are outstanding. There's quite a few scenes of heads, I'll leave it as that, and they just look all moist and disgusting, really well done, I must admit. And it's really clever. I do like when a giallo is really clever, when there's an overarching story, and there is in this. It's not really a spoiler, but it's about a nursery rhyme and a children's book, because the dwarf murderer was an author. But the nursery rhyme is very clever, and as you watch Max Van Sydow's character Moretti kind of unravel the plot, unravel the story, try and piece bits and together from the 1983 murders and the recent murders, and start piecing them all together to try and, you know, catch the killer. And it's just really well done, and I got really invested into the investigation side of the murder. So all in all, you know, really does feel of its time, 2000. I say that like I'm really old, but now it's 20 years ago. You do feel it's like a late 90s movie with the fashion, the music, etc. There is some weird scenes with music where it just, yeah, goes off on one a bit. There's a scene where he's in a car, the Jason character, and it's cutting back from like heavy, like dancey rock music to Swan Lake, where his girlfriend's playing the harp. But weird, it just really took me out of it. But overall, do you know what? I actually had a really good time with Sleepless. I know it's not one of his best, but when you have a resume like Dario Argento, he has such a fantastic filmography, and I think this is deserving to be in there. So Sleepless, certainly one I'd recommend for any Argento fans, and even if you just want to dip your toe in the giallo genre, this is a good one to check out. So finish off, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 arrows. I would have liked to go longer, but I think they could have cut a bit out of it, and yeah, I think it was too much of a run time. And if I'm being really really awkward, then you've seen it before. Okay, so yeah, 3 out of 5 arrows. So yeah, Sleepless done. I'm looking forward to doing some more Argento classics in this Bite the Arrow. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on Sleepless. Put some comments below, and I'll see you again soon for another episode of Bite the Arrow. Cheers.